I have never felt like an artist. It's wild because I've worked as a graphic artist for well over a decade. I remember desperately wanting to work in animation and illustration as a kid, drawing my own versions of Mega Man and other obsessions like Dragon Ball Z. I remember the kids in my art class that were wildly more skilled than me, and comparison really killed a lot of that excitement. I rarely felt like once I put a mark on paper, it was anything close to what I intended. Once I started working on the illustrations for Battle School and was working in pixel art specifically, I was able to create limitations around how I worked that gave me more precision of intent paired with the ability to work non destructively. Don't get me wrong, I really need to keep sketching, and I've really been trying to lately. And getting back into sketching has really reignited the playful side of this because I've gotten very technical and precise. Battle School was me playing around with new tools. It was me limiting myself just to one color palette of black and white, and then getting good at gradients within using a dithering pattern as the midtones. The art of Battle School is a boundary that I really want to keep for myself. When I look at upcoming projects, I don't really want to stretch outside of pixel art because it is a limitation and a boundary on abstraction. And your art becomes more intentional and loved. And I think when it is given less tools to play with. But I found myself for years being drawn to Illustrator first because it worked simpler, and I described it like Legos before I ever started toying around with the idea of doing pixel art. It's funny because Illustrator isn't a pixel based program, whereas the chaos that is Photoshop lets you finger paint. There's so much more at your fingertips when it comes to what level of detail you want to go into and how chaotic it could be. Illustrator had limitations for me. It allowed me to work precisely and methodically using vectors, simple dots and lines that allowed me to create shapes. Those forms are the foundation of artistic interpretation of characters and logos and designs. I just found myself with two big things fighting against me: decision paralysis, because I quite literally could do anything, and a lack of control. I was struggling with the medium rather than being empowered by the medium. That's why I loved playing with Legos as a kid. I would begin to click brick after brick after brick, and I created an abstraction of this idea that I had, whether it was a robot made out of bricks or it was simply a wall. I was using incremental pieces of the medium to build something. And that medium allowed me to get a step away from the idea that needed to be precise for me. I believe that one, creating boundaries for yourself is going to help you on any creative project. Saying to yourself, like I did with Battle School, I am only going to use this many colors. I am only going to use this many fonts. It's how you create creativity for yourself. And I don't really know if I would have been able to create Battle School if I allowed myself even one more color. I strongly considered adding in another color, like a yellow or a red. But the minute I did, everything got exponentially harder to work on. Was that third color a midtone? Was that third color light or energy? It became a huge question that then had to be answered. And instead, I could just reduce back down to saying, no, that is outside of scope. Scope is black and white. That's it. Then when I get around to working on things like the cadet record, which is the character sheet, I'm able to, one, limit like the complexity of color on your personal printer and give you something simple and aesthetically pleasing in line with what the rest of the project is. Create heftier boundaries on your next creative project that will push you to be creative, that will make it better. I cannot wait to see what you make.